10 good reasons for Maduro's capture. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and follow for news breakdowns. 1. Focused incapacitation of an alleged transnational offender, criminal justice. If the U.S. view is Maduro equals command node for narco networks, removing the node is classic incapacitation, reduce the ability to direct trafficking, money laundering, and violent proxy groups. 2. Deterrence signal, criminal justice and information theory. The act broadcasts a costly signal. Indictments and rewards are not symbolic. That can raise perceived risk for co-conspirators and future state-enabled trafficking. 3. Disruption of a revenue system, systems theory. If a regime's survival relies on oil revenues plus illicit revenues, targeting leadership plus oil quarantine pressure reported in coverage is an attempt to starve the system's reinforcing feedback loops. 4. Treating cross-border harm as an enforcement priority, criminal justice and policy. Supporters argue that fentanyl-linked cocaine flows and gang linkages are public safety harms with measurable domestic costs. Therefore, interdiction plus prosecution is a rational policy objective. 5. Substitution for large-scale war, policy administration. The best case theory is that one decisive raid avoids a long conventional campaign, a narrow objective, a short timeline, and fewer downstream commitments. Whether that happened is debated. 6. Accountability narrative, policy legitimacy. Supporters frame it as rule of law messaging. Even a head of state faces court if charged with narco-terrorism and trafficking conspiracies, as described in reporting. 7. Reducing future migrant outflows, systems and policy. If Venezuela's governance collapse drives displacement, supporters argue that pressure for regime change could reduce long-run outmigration, though outcomes are uncertain and could worsen in the short run. 8. Geopolitical denial, systems theory. Backers argue Maduro's alignment with U.S. adversaries makes Venezuela a hostile platform. Removal reduces an adversary foothold in the hemisphere. China publicly criticized the capture. 9. Credibility repair after years of reward-only policy performance. From a policy evaluation perspective, raising rewards without an enforcement endpoint can appear to signal low implementation capacity. Acting closes the loop between policy tool and outcome. 10. Precedent analogy, Noriega model, criminal justice and historical policy. Supporters point to the 1989 Noriega case. Indicted leader, U.S. operation, then U.S. prosecution, arguing it has precedent even if controversial. Did the U.S. break international law? Many international law experts say yes, likely, based on the core UN Charter rule. No use of force against another state except A. UN Security Council authorization or B. Self-defense. Reuters summarizes expert views that drug trafficking and gang activity are criminal matters and don't meet the armed attack threshold typically used to justify unilateral force, and notes the absence of explicit Venezuelan consent or UN authorization. Also, the administration's reported rhetoric about running Venezuela muddies any narrow law enforcement theory. It makes it look more like regime change and occupation, which is even harder to square with international law. Did the U.S. break U.S. domestic law? Domestically, it's contested, not a clean yes and no. Key issues. Congress versus the president's war powers. Reuters notes Congress was not notified before the operation, per Seca Rubio, and legal experts raise separation of powers questions. Limited action in national interest argument. Presidents of both parties have claimed authority for limited strikes under Article 2. If it becomes ongoing control and occupation, the legal risk grows. War powers resolution timelines, appropriations, explicit authorization. The more it looks like running the country, the weaker the limited rationale becomes. Do we have authority under law to seize a sitting head of state? U.S. criminal charges can exist. Indictments, warrants. Still, a criminal indictment alone doesn't create international legal authority to use military force inside another sovereign state. That's precisely the expert critique Reuters reports. Head of state immunity is another fault line. Even if the U.S. doesn't recognize him as legitimate, That recognition posture is not universally accepted, and it doesn't automatically solve the sovereignty problem. What are critics saying, and are they right? Main criticisms, and why they're not trivial. Illegal use of force and sovereignty breach. This is the strongest critique under the UN Charter framework. No clear end state. Critics warn about mission creep, retaliation, and regional blowback, especially if the U.S. claims it will run Venezuela. Destabilization precedent. UN leadership and multiple states are reportedly worried that it sets a dangerous template others could copy. Are critics right? On international law, their argument is strong. On policy outcomes, it's uncertain. You can remove a leader and still worsen violence, fragmentation, and anti-U.S. alignment. What supporters say, critics miss. Enforcement credibility. A reward. Plus indictment regime without capture can be seen as hollow. Action changes incentives. Deterrence. Public safety framing. The administration frames it as a law enforcement mission tied to drugs and terror-linked gangs. These points can be coherent as objectives, even if the legal and second-order effects remain serious problems. Biden $25 million versus Trump $50 million versus did nothing. On the numbers, Reuters reports the reward started at $15 million in 2020, was raised to $25 million in January 2025, and then to $50 million in August 2025. Whether did nothing is fair depends on what you count: sanctions, diplomacy, covert disruption. But indeed, the capture did not happen until this January 2026 operation per current reporting. Is it better for Venezuela, South America, and the world? Possible better path, best case. Rapid transition to a widely accepted interim authority, plus credible elections. Security forces stay cohesive, no civil war and cartelization. Humanitarian inflows stabilize, displacement slows. Possible worse path, risk case. Power vacuum, factional fighting, more displacement. Regional backlash and long-term anti-U.S. alignment. A precedent that normalizes cross-border abductions and strikes right now. It's too early to score as better or worse with confidence. The early indicators in reporting include international condemnation and deep uncertainty about what happens next. What could have been done better? Process and policy design. Build multilateral legal cover first. OAS and UN pathways, broader coalition, documented consent if any existed. Separate capture from governs. If it's truly law enforcement, don't pair it with messaging about running Venezuela, Reuters notes. This contradiction is central to the legality critique. Publish an end-state plan. Who governs, timelines, elections, humanitarian corridors, rules of engagement, troop footprint. Congressional authorization or rapid consultation to reduce domestic legitimacy risk. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and follow for news breakdowns.